Hey cultivator, welcome back to my channel. Do you ever wonder what you should say on those behavioral interview questions? Because I hear from so many job seekers that they know that they anticipate them, they know how to break it down, but yet when it comes to interviewing, they have a really difficult time sharing their responses right on the spot. So if that sounds like you at all, then you're going to enjoy this video because I'm going to break down once and for all again what the behavioral question format response is in terms of the STAR, but it'll also give you some practical tips and tools to make sure that you can come up with a response on the spot, because I know that that could be nerve-wracking sometimes and we might go blank, but there's a way to combat those interview jitters. So without further ado, let's dive in. So before we dig into the response of what an ideal answer sounds and looks like, let's talk about what a behavioral interview question is and why these are so dang popular. So a behavioral interview question is essentially an interview question that is going to ask you about something that has happened in the past, whether it's a past situation, a past circumstance, a past encounter, and they're really wanting to understand how you can articulate and walk them through what had occurred and happened, what it is that you did, and what is that ultimate result that stemmed into something positive. So we'll break that down into further detail, but the reason why these are asked so much during interviews is because psychology has taught us that whatever has happened in the past, however we reacted or responded to it, is a very good indicator of how we're going to encounter that same situation and respond or react to it. So past behavior predicts future behavior. And in these interview questions, employers are really just getting a good sense of how prepared you came into this interview. You know, how have you been able to come in anticipating some of the questions that might be really relevant to the role that you're going into. It's a really great way to understand your communication style, how well you articulate certain things, and also just how well you walk somebody through the logic of how polished and professional you are. All right, so let's dig into how you might respond to a behavioral question. And again, behavioral questions, you can detect them because they're typically asking about something that's happened in the past. So it could start off with, tell me about a time where you had a difficult conversation with a client. Tell me about a time where you made a mistake in the past. Or it might sound like, when have you missed a deadline in the past? Tell me more about that project, right? So again, it's a very past-oriented scenario and situation. So once you detect that it is a behavioral question, you can really start to go into the STAR format, which is situation, task, action, and result. So the one area I see a lot of people trip up a lot is that they focus too much on the situation. They want to go into like all of the nitty-gritty details. Maybe they love storytelling, and so they're really transporting the interviewer to that situation. But what that does is it eliminates the more important aspects, which is really highlighting what it is that you did in the situation, which is the task and the action, and most importantly, what is the result. And the result is, again, the most important part, and this is the part where I see so many people leave off, but it is, again, the most important. So let's just go into an example of how this might play out during an interview, and just what an acceptable response might be in terms of how much you're sharing or what the scope is. Now for this example, I'm going to go into a negative situation because I think a lot of people struggle with leaving things that are negative into a positive. So the example I want to share is, tell me about a time that you had a conflict with a fellow coworker. So what people typically will do is they'll spend a lot of time going into the situation again, but that's not really the most important factor here. At the same time, I do want to set up an understanding of what happened. So in this case, I might just start off with the situation. I had a coworker that we didn't necessarily see eye to eye in terms of deadlines and the way that we communicated. And as a result of that, I felt a lot of animosity in the workplace. So that was kind of like the situation. And again, you can see I just kind of painted a general picture of what was happening in that particular instance or moment. Now it's time to go into the task and the action. So what was I tasked with, or in this case, like what is it that I did? How did I act upon it? And so I might share the response of, I always take pride in developing a really positive work environment, because if we are not getting along, it's really hard to get work done and be as productive as possible. And so what I did was I set up a one-on-one meeting with this particular coworker in private, and I just had a very frank discussion without pointing any fingers on any side, and also not to make any accusatory statements, but instead just kind of sharing, here's what I've been observing. And I asked very openly, what is it that I could do differently to improve upon the situation? So in this case, I actually took ownership and tried to diffuse the situation from finger pointing or saying this is what you need to be doing instead. That's kind of like the task and the action, and I took my interviewer to a very specific conversation that I had, because again, it's a very specific situation. And now it's time to share the ultimate result. What is important is to share a positive result. And if there is something quantifiable and tangible there, it is important to share. Otherwise, you can kind of just paint the picture of what came out of the situation. In this example, I might share, in that conversation, the coworker actually apologized and said, I'm so sorry that you felt that way. I've had a lot going on in my personal life that I didn't realize I was allowing seep into work. I will do a better job. And, I ended up listening to this coworker, and we actually formed a really solid foundation moving forward. And I let them know that if there's anything that I can do to help them during this difficult time, please let me know. And moving forward after that conversation, we actually had a really positive work environment and positive work relationship. Every time we had to work on a project together or needed something, we actually were very cordial with each other and even friendly, all because we were able to openly communicate what we felt in that moment and clear up any misunderstandings. And so you can see from that example, I took a negative situation and yet turned it into a positive. And at the end of the day, again, communication is really how you make the interviewer feel, or the person you're speaking to feel. And so hopefully through my response and my answer, my interviewer walks away thinking that, wow, Emily is a team player. I feel really confident that Emily is going to be able to address any type of conflict in the workplace by being mature and professional about it, and also just having hard and difficult conversations. So you can see how an answer like that is much more powerful than, for an instance, saying I've never had any conflicts with a coworker, because again, even if you're the peacemaker, there's oftentimes challenging situations that occur in the workplace. Now, there might be some times where you get a question and you can't really think of anything at the top of your mind because you just haven't encountered a situation like that. So for instance, maybe you're the peacemaker at work and you've actually never had any drama with any colleagues. Good for you. But what you can do is maybe address to the interviewer that you would like to take a different angle on that question. So what that response might sound like is, that's a really great question. I can't really think of a particular situation where I've had a conflict with a coworker. However, I can maybe share an example of a time where I had a conflict or made a mistake with a client and how I addressed that. Right? So you can still take a question at its core. Again, this one is about conflict resolution and thinking about another relationship or angle around that. Now, with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you're looking for help with preparing for your interviews, you'll definitely want to check out the resource library down below. It's filled with a ton of goodies and worksheets and templates to help you prepare for that next interview in terms of the context and take all of this to the next level. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, because I'm releasing this video next week. Until then, continue to cultivate your life and your career.